So let's start. Chapter 10, we're going to talk about listing agreements.
Oh, that doesn't have a lot of questions.
You're going to have a lot of questions. Okay, listing agreements. You guys know what a listing is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is it?
When you put your house on the market.
So it's putting the house on market, like classified type of
Yeah.
thing, right? Yes?
You put it on MLS? Or
MLS, okay. So there's a difference between advertising and listing. Listing traditionally is on the MLS or corporate approved site. So it can be a RE/MAX listing, will be on RE/MAX site, okay? But traditionally listings go on MLS. There's different types of listings we're going to talk about. If it's an open listing, it doesn't go on the MLS. It's still a listing. It'll be on my site, but not on my corporate site, but not on MLS. Got it?
Got it.
All right, so we're going to go over that stuff, yeah.
do the clients choose to be on the open site versus the MLS?
We actually going to go over the 3 different types of listings. And yes, a client should be aware of the options.
Mhm.
But most salespeople, when they show up, is please sign here, here, and here, and they don't even fill it out. Just sign. I'll fill it out later. Can't do that. But that's what a lot of them do. All right? The right way, mister. The right way, please.
I didn't say nothing.
All right.
Did I say anything?
Anyway, so where it says listing the property, usually I stop here a little bit, just in the first page, to give you a broader view of what we're going to go over. Okay, because the next chapter is contracts, and that's the buyer side. Usually a contract only comes in when there's a buyer. Okay, so this is the seller side. For you to list a property, you're dealing with a seller. So if you want to write somewhere seller where it says listing or anything like that, you can. Because again, you're dealing with seller. All right. So, to acquire their inventories, brokers and salespeople must obtain listings, which are properties they are authorized to offer for sale. Again, dealing with a seller. Now, you already know this from chapter 1 and 2 and 3, which only a broker can act as an agent to list, sell, or rent another person's real estate. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
The broker. But who are you?
Salesperson.
You're salespeople, but aren't we the ones that get the listings? Or is the broker that gets the listings?
The broker's the one that gets the listing, and then he assigns you to the.
No,
No.
the salesperson gets a listing and gives it to the broker.
We're the hunters.
Okay.
We're the hunters. Got it? We're the one that gets it, brings it home, says, hey, let's feast. Does that make sense?
Got it.
So your broker's is there waiting for those listings, but it's the broker's listing, is not yours. You become the listing agent. And that's what, when we go to the MLS, it shows RE/MAX somewhere as the brokerage, and then listing agent, which that's what you are, will be your name. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we don't list anything, we don't solicit anything. I mean, we solicit, but on behalf of. Okay?
Mhm.
It's very important you guys understand that, because when the questions are in front of you, a lot of students get confused with that. And that's why I did, when I was telling you the roles of a broker and salesperson, the listings were missing under salesperson. Because we negotiate. We go there, knock on doors. Hey, do you want to sell? On behalf of our broker, because that's who we represent. You got it?
Mhm.
Sorry for bringing you back to chapter 1, 2, and 3, but those are the core chapters, like I told you.
Listing agent, salesperson.
Now, these acts must be done under the name and under the supervision of the broker, never in the name of the salesperson. I'll just mention that. And listing agreements generally are written contracts of employment. So you're getting employed for 6 months at a time, or 1 year at a time, or even could be a weekend. It's whatever you decide and negotiate with the seller. In fact, we're just talking about that recently, providing Fernando, right? We're just talking about that recently. There's a for sale by owner. Do you guys remember these?
Mhm.
For sale by owner, they're unrepresented.
Yeah.
Right? So what I told one of our agents was, hey, go knock on that door and tell them, hey, let me do an open house for you. Let me do a listing, a 1 weekend listing, if anything. That's one of the alternatives that we came up with. Could be a 2-week listing. I had somebody did a 2-week listing and had very good success with that, right? The one in Elizabeth, the 4 family,
Mm-hmm.
right? To me, that's crazy. A 2-week listing, I would never say yes to that. But sellers do. Depends on how desperate they are. Especially for sale by owners, it's probably been there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll take whatever it comes. So if you come to them, and the only reason why I stay here a little bit so you understand what goes behind the scenes, it's not for state exam, but it might give you a better idea of how things work. So when you go there, it's been on the market for a while, and you show up and say, hey, no commitment, just 1 week, 2 weeks, and then we're done. If I'm not able to show the houses to enough people, then we'll just back out. No commitment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a long term. But during those 2 weeks, I'm going to advertise your property so well that you're going to hire me for more. We're going to renew this listing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You got to be 100% sure of your market and what you're going to do, because these are contracts of employment. You work for them during that period of time. Okay. Now, New Jersey statute of fraud stipulates that to be entitled to a commission on a real estate transaction, a listing broker must have a written authorization to act as a client's broker. Simple. Have you ever went to somebody's house or you know, somebody's car or somebody's business and say, hey, I'm going to sell your business? No. You wait for them to say, could you help me? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, you're asking how to dispose of the TV. I'm not going to go into your house and say, hey, this TV got to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So here's the same thing. You got to have an authorization, but for us, it's written authorization. So make sure you underline, because it's not just verbal, written authorization. Okay. Now this agreement, which is the listing agreement, must state, very important, underline this, the rate or exact amount of commission to be earned by the broker, and must specify a definite termination date for the agreement. So I stop here a lot because you have to understand, when you sit down with the seller, most of the times, that's when you negotiate how much you're worth. That's when you say that 10%, the 8%, 7%, all the way down to 3 or 4%, depending on how good you negotiate. See, it's either you close or they close that conversation. If they close that conversation, you're at 3, 4%. If you close the conversation, you're at 7 or 8%. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because everything we do is a negotiation, right?
Yeah.
If your parents, you know very well, everything you do is negotiating.
Yeah.
Right? If you're married, if you're in a relationship, everything you do is negotiating. Simple. If you have a job, you negotiate it. We spoke about this,
Yeah.
right? So here's the same thing, it's negotiation, but up front, this is the difference between other states and us. Well, most states have something similar to us, which is up front, we're telling you, this is what we want to help you, right? So we want 6% to help you sell the house. That's our marketing fee. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be up front. We're going to talk about this in different page, where in Florida, for instance, you can have net listing. Net listing is, hey, whatever it brings, I just want something, and we'll negotiate it then or whatever. No. Here, state of New Jersey, we're a performance-based state. If you sell for $100,000, you get 6% of that. If you sell for $200,000, you get 7% of that, whatever you negotiate. You got it?
Mhm.
Up front, not later on. And a definite termination date. That means, like I said, it's a 6-month agreement or a 2-week agreement or 1-year agreement, but it has to say specifically it ends on this date. So this listing agreement or employment contract is valid for X amount of days, months, whatever, and it ends on this specific date. So after this date, we're not working anymore unless we do what? Renew the listing.
On the test, there was a question about the definite, not the definite termination, the rate amounts when you're negotiating at the beginning of the contract,
Mhm.
where you negotiated the percentage that you're going to earn already,
Yeah.
but then sometime in the middle of the contract, I forgot what happens, but then the person who wants to sell the house
Mhm.
requests from the listing agent, can we renegotiate your rate?
At the time of renewal.
No, like right in the middle, like
Okay.
you can't do that. Okay.
No, because it's already written in the
Well,
contract.
well, listen. Here's the thing. If you're asking me, I'm the seller, and you're the salesperson, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're asking me, Mr. Seller, can we renegotiate? It's up to me to say yes or no.
Okay.
If I go to you and I ask you to renegotiate the terms, it's up to you to say yes or no. I mean,
But-
not you, your broker.
But it is possible.
If we're both in
If
agreement,
both-
because
okay.
every contract has this clause, which is any changes to it must be agreed by both parties or all parties and signed and initialed by all parties. So you cannot alter, that's probably one of the answers.
Yeah.
You cannot alter the contract by yourself. Even if there's verbal agreement, you cannot alter by yourself. I still have to sign. So all parties involved have to sign something. That is key. Again, we're gonna go into contracts and state that. But that is key when you're preparing any type of contract. Any changes hereon will be signed by all parties and acknowledged by all parties in writing, okay?
Gotcha.
Cool. Now, I told you they have to have a written agreement, correct?
Mhm.
Listing agreement? What if, I mean, I haven't been to your houses, but let's assume for this sake, I've been to your house, right? And we've known each other for years, we're good friends. This is all assumptions because we're not friends at all, but but let's say we're having coffee next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're having coffee and you say, Bruno, man, I need to, I want to sell my house. I'm like, okay. Well, Anthony, I've known you for a while, so I know your house. How about we put it on the market right now? I don't have listing agreements. I don't have anything with me, but I have something called a smartphone. Smartphone, tablet, or the computer. I can grab either one of those and put your property online right away.
Mm-hmm.
But do we have something in writing?
No.
No. We had a verbal agreement. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. Can we have a verbal agreement in listings?
No.
No? Yes.
Really?
But it must be put in writing within 5 days.
Oh,
5 calendar days. So underline 5 days. And that's calendar days again. So, Anthony, we spoke at the cafe. I have 5 days, calendar days from the day we spoke and put it online to come up to you and say, hey, here's the agreement. Please sign. Because what happens? If you want commission, if you expect to get paid, but there's a buyer that shows up next day from us listing, my good friend right here doesn't care about me. Because that's what friends and family do. They don't care, right? Guess what he's going to do?
so,
Say, oh, thanks for helping me.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Eh? You want a coffee? I'll buy you a coffee.
or McDonald's?
Or McDonald's, because that's what friends are for,
Deliver.
right? Not any McDonald's. It's like the dollar menu. You know what? If they have the $half menu, you just take the $half menu, right?
I would get you DiGiorno, just letting you know.
Excuse me?
DiGiorno.
Ah, delivery. Nope, it's the Giorno. All right, cool. Great friends.
Now you know.
Now I know. But both of you are the quiet ones, so I'll go with you guys.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Got you.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I've known you for so long, I'm comfortable with you, I'll just put it online. But even so, within the 5 days, I got to bring you a contract to sign. Because if there's a sale that happens within those 5 days, I might not be entitled to commission because it's up to the person that sold
But
the house.
in any case, if the house, someone wants to buy the house the next day, what are you gonna do if you don't have the written agreement?
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
That's what I'm
So
trying to say.
What are you gonna do?
So should you have a verbal agreement?
No.
No.
No. Should you walk around with contracts in your hand all the time?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm telling you is that the law allows for those 5 days.
Mhm.
So for state exam, think about it. You have those 5 days. See, there's a lot of realtors that are afraid of losing the deal. So they make these mistakes, which are allowable, right?
Mhm.
They make these mistakes. Well, let's put it on the market right now. And then show the house, forget the contract, show the house, and boom,
House for sale. So house
house
sold.
sold.
So I already gonna come, the next day with the written agreement.
That day, if you can.
You should
Then,
have it that
put
day.
it on the list and,
Get the agreement before you.
Listen, if
Yes.
you're that afraid of losing your client, then I don't know.
Knock
I don't
on
know
that
what.
door 2 a.m. Hey, got the contract ready.
No, listen.
No, I'm just.
If you go to my car, I have a bunch of listing agreements and I have a bunch of contracts for sale. So if I bump into somebody that they are desperate to buy that house or to sell that house,
Right away.
sign right here.
Yeah, but my point was, I agree with that for buyers, but for sellers, if you're that afraid of your own game,
Mm-hmm.
like you're not solid enough to prove that you're better than the next person, and they might run into somebody else like him,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're that afraid, then something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When you go in, you got to be confident. This is my listing, done. Nobody else is going to take it away. But you should always have the documents with you ready, like he does. Because then somebody like him can knock on the door. Oh, I overheard. You want to list, huh? Sign right here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, got to be strong about your game. And how much you going to charge?
Whatever commission you want.
Which is how much? I said you got to be confident when you go in.
10.
You're going to start with 10? There you go.
We start at 10 and work my way down.
That's right.
Wrong mentality, work your way up. They're gonna work your way down.
That's true.
Anyway, you got a listing not too long ago. Edison, right?
Mhm.
What was the, if you don't mind me asking, what was the listing fee,
What's the listing?
the rate?
The rate? It's 6%.
But that's because you know them from before, right? You were friends.
Yes.
Or at 6%.
Well, most people nowadays are 5%. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Did you ask for a bonus or you don't care about bonuses?
Listen, it's $1 million sell between the sell and the buy. Which one was I expect? It's good like that.
That's when you ask for 20%.
Like,
So you got him into the sides because he's going to help,
One, yeah.
right? They're selling, then they're buying something else.
No, they're buying already and they are selling.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
No, so that's good.
So that's why you negotiate to 6. In those cases are okay. And by the way, at the end, did you like the service? How about a bonus? Anyway, everything can happen until the closing date. So at the day of the closing, if they decide to give a bonus, it will be written on the agreement, paid outside of closing or anything like that, but it still has to be there. Remember, no
Yeah.
secret profits.
Mm-hmm.
Still has to be there. If you think I've provided you exceptional service, would you mind giving me something extra? I got no problem with that, right?
Mm-mm.
Simple. Yeah. Or you can put the tip jar. Imagine at the closing.
Put a little
I
hat.
should start doing that.
Tips. Yeah, it's a good
Tip
idea.
jar.
Put a little hat there. All tips welcome.
That's it. Or you put cake pops and just say, hey, take one for $5,000. What do you think, Ali? Like, all right, listing agreements. Like I said, the seller should be aware of all the options that they have. And that's what I'm talking about in this whole chapter, all the options they have. Most salespeople, as I mentioned earlier, they go there, please sign here, initial here, I'll take care of the rest later. Okay? Big mistake, you can't do that. If you do that, you're not doing anything good for your client, because your client doesn't even understand. And if they don't understand the contract they got into, they have up to 6 years, which we'll talk in the next chapter again, they have up to 6 years to sue you. And they can sue you because you took advantage of them in a contractual agreement. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, there's 3 types of listings that you should explain to your clients before you get them into a listing agreement. There's the open listing, exclusive agency listing, and exclusive right to sell. The difference between these is very simple. My analogy is going to be very ridiculous, but you guys are going to love it, I think. I'm going to start by reading, and then I'll read all 3, and then I'll come back and explain them, okay? So, open listing. In an open listing, a seller agrees to pay a broker a commission only if he or she procures a buyer for the property. So if you find a buyer, you get paid. If you don't find a buyer, you don't get paid, but that's normal, right? If the seller can enter into open listings with any number of brokers, all acting as agents. If the seller, you have highlighted there, if the seller personally sells the property without, underlined, without the aid of any of the brokers, he or she is not obligated to pay any of them a commission. So open listing, I work with you guys, but if I sell to my cousin, I don't have to pay you anything. All right? I'm going to show you the differences, and then I'll come back and give you a better example. Exclusive agency listing. Only one broker is specifically authorized to act as exclusive agent for principal. And I have it highlighted there. If the seller finds a buyer with no help from any broker, the seller retains the right to sell the property himself or herself without obligation to the broker. Okay? So in this scenario, only one broker we work with versus several, right? But the seller is still entitled to sell to his or her cousin without paying you anything. Okay? And now we have exclusive right to sell, which is the most common listing we have, without explaining to the sellers that they had options, obviously. But it's the most common listing they have. In an exclusive right to sell listing, one broker is appointed as the sole agent of the seller and is given an exclusive authorization to represent the property in question. The seller must pay a broker a commission regardless, underlined, regardless of who sells the property, if it is sold while the listing is in effect. In green, put stars around that. If the seller gives the broker an exclusive right to sell listing, but finds a buyer without the broker's assistance, the seller, please underline, must still pay the broker a commission. All right? So my analogy, my explanation to this is very simple. Again, I like to have comparisons so you guys, real life comparisons so you guys understand better. In an open listing, think about like you're just dating, but it's kind of like open relationship. You're still trying the waters, right? You can go here, you can go there, whatever. You're not committed, right? If you're dating, it's still not a real commitment in an open relationship, right? In a because you're not committed, you're not going to put too much work or effort into it. Good. In an exclusive agency agreement, it's like you're engaged. You're engaged, but you're still not married, so there's still time to jump out the boat. So if you find somebody else, you're out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's pretty much what it is. Exclusive right to sell, we're married. So either way, this divorce is going to hurt somebody. It's going to cost. Does that make sense? So open listing, we can go contract with Wyker, Century 21, Remax, and so on. Like as a seller, please sell my house, please sell my house, please sell my house, please sell my house, and I'll keep on going. And anybody that sells my house gets paid. And that means me. If I find somebody to buy my house, I don't have to pay any of you. You got it? In the exclusive agency, I only work with Remax, for instance, right? Remax is the sole agent or broker for my listing. But if I find, like, let's say you're from Wyker and you bring a buyer, okay? I pay Remax, Remax pays your broker. Make sense so far? We spoke about this earlier, right? In the different chapter. But if I find somebody to buy my house without any help of Remax broker, then I don't have to pay you anything. You got it? So the first two, I don't have to pay you if I find one through my own efforts. The last one, exclusive right to sell, I'm only working with one broker. Wyker can bring the buyer, and again, I pay him and he pays you, right? But if I find somebody through my own efforts to buy my house, I still have to pay commission. So like I said, regardless, it's going to cost. Good?
Yeah.
That's
Got the difference?
And that's what we use the most in New Jersey.
No, that's when I said it's the most
Common.
common is because salespeople do not explain these options to the sellers. Because if you don't know how to explain these things, guess what the seller's going to do? Open listing every time.
Exactly.
Why?
Because you don't have to pay you.
Because they don't have to pay, but that's the thing. If you explain things properly, open relationship, fiance and married, right? Then you know that I'm going to be the most committed in the marriage. I'm going to sell your house. I'm going to do everything to get your house out there and have it exposed as much as possible in the marketing efforts that I do. In the other ones, I don't care that much. So which one do you want? Do you want a serious agent, a serious commitment, or you want somebody that doesn't really care about you?
Serious.
Serious.
That's what I'm trying to say. So if you explain it this way, they'll almost always go for the exclusive right to sell. The problem is, nobody explains, check off this box, let's move forward. Okay, but you guys need to know this. Especially for the exam, you gotta know the difference.
That's it.
I've been saying that, but
I have clients that ask me actually for if they can do it, and I said, yes, you guys can, not with me.
and you're entitled to reject, but the thing is they're
Yeah,
entitled to
that's
know,
what I'm
that's what I'm
saying.
saying. You're entitled to reject. If you're not gonna work with me in an exclusive agency, then I'm not gonna work with you. If you're not gonna get married to me, then I don't want this relationship. Do you understand? You're entitled to reject the client. That's okay. But if they don't know, that's the problem. If you get a lawsuit because they did not know, we spoke about this earlier.
Oh,
Get
I
a lawsuit.
explain them all the time. They maybe don't remember later, 30 seconds later, but that's their problem. I did explain that.
See? It becomes the he said, she said type of thing. The difference is consumer protection is totally different than somebody with a license. We are responsible and we're more liable than they are. Okay? So you guys need to understand that, whether you're doing for the test or later. Please try to explain as much as you can, just to cover everything. Net listings, speaking of explaining. Net listing.
Illegal in
It's illegal in New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah. So net listing is based on an amount of money that the seller will receive if the property is sold. So the broker, us, are free to offer the property for sale at any price. please put stars. If the property is sold, the broker pays the seller only the net amount previously agreed on and keeps the rest. This type of listing is illegal in New Jersey. It lends itself to fraud and it's not in the seller's best interest. So what we're saying here is, let's say the property is worth $400,000. Fair market value, right? Fair market value. But you find a seller that says, hey, I want $200,000 for my house. Because we ask questions, how much are you looking for the house? Right? We got to know if they're realistic about this or not. Because if it's worth $400 and want to sell it for $600, you're wasting your time. There's no point in listing this house. Okay? You're going to waste time, I'm letting you know right now. So you got to be good at explaining to your client how much the house is worth. Again, otherwise it's going to be on the market, and then I'll come in, or he'll come in and say, I'm sorry it didn't work out with your previous agents. They obviously did not know the market. Something like that. You know, there's different strategies to speak with expired listings. But fair market value is $400,000. The client only wants $200,000. That's what they're looking for. And that's the net. That's what they want to take home. Think of net, same thing as your paycheck. There's a gross, the one that you wish you would keep, and there's the net, which is what you take home after deductions, right? So they want $200,000. Now, you find somebody that's willing to give $400,000 for the property, because again, it's the fair market value, right? You give the seller $200,000. How much is left?
200.
200.
Not a bad deal, right? 50% commission, right?
Know your worth.
Know your worth, right? See, this part,
Illegal.
illegal. In New Jersey and a few other states, right? If you had negotiated this up front,
Then it's legal.
then you would be legal. If you said, I want 50% commission out of the sales price, and you already know it's going to be $400,000, right? It makes it legal because you negotiated up front. But the thing is, you have to let the seller know the fair market value.
The seller or the buyer?
The seller. You represent the seller here. This is all sellers. We're just dealing with sellers right
But you
now.
have to tell the buyer that, you know, it's the value of the property.
That's separate right now.
Okay.
The buyer's totally separate. I'm talking about you're dealing with the seller and the seller's best interest. Because if I represent you to sell your house, it's your best interest, not the buyer's best interest. So I should have told you, Allie, your property's worth, you want 200? No problem. Your property's worth 400. So in Florida, as an example, if you say your property's worth 400 and they agree to just take 200, this is legal. In Jersey, we're a performance-based state. So we got a percentage of whatever it sells for. You got it? We got a percentage of whatever it sells for. So our job is to explain always what's best for the client, and this is what's best for you. Because that's what the property is worth. What we take is a percentage of whatever I can get you. Got it? It could be a flat fee. I can say, hey, it's going to cost you $50,000 for the sale of this house. If we agree to that up front, that's how we started this chapter, then we're good. We're representing the seller right now. Next chapter, we could represent the buyer. But right now, best interest is seller, always. What are we supposed to do? Get the highest possible number for the client. Got it? Simple. Yes? Question?
I just that was confusing. Something that's okay.
Yeah.
I understand right now.
Okay, so this is the seller side only. Okay?
And the fair market value is based on comps, right?
Based on comps usually, yeah.
But what happens if in the contract it says you'll take a percentage, so the remaining balance will be given to you as bonus? Still illegal? Really?
Definite amounts. It says right here. Okay. Previous page. You should have put stars next to it. It's highlighted. It says the agreement must state the rate
The rate, yeah.
or exact amount of commission to be earned.
Okay.
So up front, that's when my negotiations are done.
Right.
It's not halfway, it's not about future, no. I'm getting a percentage of whatever it sells for, not whatever's left, okay?
Got it.
All right, do you see multiple listing service?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's what it stands for.
Huh?
That's what it stands for, MLS.
Oh, you didn't know what MLS was?
No,
Not when I mentioned it the first time?
well,
On
yeah,
chapter 1?
yeah, but
She
You know what I
remember
mean.
that you talked about
Seeing it in
Did you
print.
mention that?
yeah,
Did you mention the guy in chapter 1?
It was actually mentioned in chapter 1. No, but what I'm saying is, remember he said that he mentioned to the client a bunch of times about open listing, exclusive agency, exclusive right to sell? It's easy. I mean, we tell you so much stuff that it's easy to say that I did disclose. You just don't remember.
remember.
All right, so MLS. Ready?
Mhm.
Multiple listing service. That's the Craigslist for realtors. If you're on the right, I call it Craigslist for realtors because what do we put on Craigslist? Classifieds, right?
Mhm.
In this case is where we advertise the listings to all other realtors. It's available to the public as well, but it's mainly to all other realtors that are part of the MLS. So it says, MLS is usually organized within a geographic area by a group of brokers or board of realtors for the purpose of sharing listings. You guys know the difference between Facebook and LinkedIn? Facebook, LinkedIn, the difference?
One, because Facebook is more for social between friends, families, and then LinkedIn is more towards colleagues, maybe potential
Professional.
professionals.
So one is personal level, the other is at professional level. So Craigslist is like the personal level, right? You can put your listings there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the MLS is between professionals, okay? Again, just like LinkedIn is available for everybody, but it's geared more towards the business side of it, okay? So that's the difference. And it's organized within a geographic area. See, we have different MLSs. Vai descer lá fora, vai. Tchau. Oh, man. A lot of editing on this one.
For real.
Jesus. So there's different MLSs in New Jersey. We have, for instance, the GSMLS, which we belong to, NJMLS, CJMLS, and so on. So there's a Hudson MLS. There's a bunch of them. Now, you're going to belong to one, and there's a bunch of members in that one, and that's where we share. If you live in a different geographic area, or your market is intended in a different geographic area, then you should belong to that MLS, because that's where most of the listings for that area will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But not too long ago, Craigslist was that separated. Still is. Like for you to search something in North Jersey, you got to go click the North Jersey part, right? So it still is kind of separated, but now there's ways to search the whole Craigslist about what you need, right? Now, all the way at the bottom it says, the listing broker states how the listing is offered, and that is to subagents, buyer's brokers, or transaction brokers, as well as what compensation is offered to the selling broker. So, pretty much when you go to a listing, you're going to see, you'll say subagent, so SA, and it says 0. It will say buyer's broker, and it says 2.5, for example. And it will say transaction broker, 2.5, for example. Okay? So when you see these, they're saying if you bring a buyer, you get 2.5% commission if you represent them as a buyer's broker or a transaction broker. But if you represent them as a sub-agent, and I'll talk about that in a second, you get 0. Meaning, we don't want these people.
Mm-hmm.
We're entitled to reject. If we explain things right to the seller, but nobody ever explains, but you're entitled to reject sub-agency, okay? And I'll tell you why nobody ever explains, because I'm going to explain it a little bit, and you'll be so confused that you'll forget it in 2 seconds, okay? Nobody offers sub-agency. They offer buyer's broker and transaction broker, and even transaction broker sometimes has 0. You either represent the buyer or we don't want you. So that's one of the things. Now, here's my question before we move forward. You're supposed to represent your clients in the best way, yes?
Mm-hmm.
One of the points that I use for the 10% to bring it up, right? One of the points that I use is I gotta pay, and this is part of actual training and not for the exam, but just so you have. The reason why I want 10%, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, is very simple. If I search right now properties like yours in this area, around the same price level that you want, I'm a realtor, right? So if I do these searches, and I see one that says this, I'll see another one that says 0, here it says 3, here it says 3. Third property, 0, 3.5, 3.5. And then there's a fourth property that says 0 here. Usually they all say 0. You okay? Oh. And here it says 2 and 2, as an example. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you were a salesperson, and some of them they are, if you're a salesperson, which one would you pick?
The second one.
This one?
Yes. No?
Or this one? That gives you 3.5.
Yes, the
3.5.
what was, the 3.5.
So, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, after doing the search, there's 30 properties that match your property in this area. There's only 4 properties that match numbers of 3 and 3.5%. Most agents out there, they're greedy. So they're only going to show the properties that match these values because they want to get paid the highest commission possible. So if I offer your property at 2%, the odds are that nobody's going to look at them. Does that make sense? This is a way to negotiate the commission up.
All the foot traffic is gonna go for.
Because all the foot traffic is going to go here because agents are salespeople and salespeople are greedy.
Hunters.
They don't care about your property, they care about the commission. They don't care about their buyers, they care about the commission. So if I see 30 properties but only 3 or 4 actually match the commission I want in my pocket, then those are the ones I'm showing. And then I'll tell the buyer, these are the only ones available. I call all to schedule appointments, but these are the only ones that are available. See, the buyer is not looking at the commission because we don't give that to the buyer, but I am. You understand? So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, understanding this, I hope you understand that by giving more commission, we'll get more people to your house. I don't mind cutting my side, so if we get a 6%, let's say, I don't mind taking 2.5 and giving out 3.5. Right? That's 6%.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's fair to me either. I'll work with you, but I don't think it's fair to me either that I do all the work and marketing and all that and get undercut. So if we work at 7%, I can do 3.5, 3.5, or even 3 and 4. Because if I give out 4, I can guarantee your house sold in 2 days. As an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You shouldn't guarantee anything, but I'm just showing you the power of them understanding, seller understanding. The more you pay out, the more people are attracted. Got it?
Yes.
All right, that's how we bring it up. So you have to understand your market, something you were saying before. You have to understand your market. And my market as a salesperson are the salespersons. That's my market. It's not Newark. You should know Newark if that's your market, like in terms of geographic. But your real market is not the buyers. You're not trying to look for buyers. You're trying to look for agents that will bring the buyers. So my market is the sharks. Let them feed.
Yeah.
I'll feed the sharks. Let them get what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Crazy, right? When you put things in this perspective.
Yeah. Throw a little blood in the water.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Let them come. You throw a little blood in the water, and they come at it. Simple.
Sell the house. Call it a day.
Yeah. Now, you don't have to do like this. You can do the average commissions of 5 and 6%. Just understand that the more you cut yourself, the worse it is for you. And most brokers, unfortunately, will tell you, no, we pay out less. So if you have a 6%, 3.5 stay in-house. Most of those 2.5 listings you'll see out there that pay you 2.5, most of them, the seller side is 3.5. Got it? I have a different mentality. I prefer to pay out more so I get everybody to me, right? It's like the bait, like you said. I prefer to pay out more and get more people to me than taking a bigger cut myself and getting only 2 or 3 exposures. So That's a mentality kind of thing. If it works for you, it works. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. You got to find your own way, as long as it's within the patterns of your broker. Now, why do we need an MLS? Why do we need like a Craigslist for realtors? Why do we need the LinkedIn side of it? Any idea?
For more exposure of the.
Exposure. That's all it is.
Advertising.
It's exposure. Well, why are you going to advertise? To gain exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what it is. So MLS offers advantages to the broker, buyer, and seller. This is a potential question. Brokers develop a sizable inventory of properties to be sold and are assured of a portion of the commission if they list the property or participate in the sale. Because if we put on the MLS, we're already guaranteed part of the commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sellers gain because all members of the MLS work to sell the property, and buyers have an efficient access to large selection of listings. For instance,
Question on that.
I know, that's why I said potential question.
Not exactly like that.
Exactly. Oh, man.
Oh,
So here's the thing. You guys know Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of products at Walmart, right?
What?
A bunch of them. Imagine the manufacturers trying to sell by their own efforts. It will take a while. Walmart is your Craigslist. Walmart is your MLS. Everybody goes to Walmart for a reason, to find the array of products, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is. We gain exposure. We can help. Buyers have the efficient access to the large selection, just like Walmart. Sellers gain, like these brands, they gain because it's out there, and there's more buyers potentially looking at it, right? Because when was the last time you went to Walmart and just picked one thing without looking at a million things before you got there?
never.
Never.
Never. Even if you don't buy, you just bought one thing at Walmart, but you always, like, listen, I've tried a million times. I'm going just for this. And usually I'm good with that. I go just for that and that's it. I get it, but then right next to it, not today. But then as I'm walking out, not
It's
today.
work for you, but not for women.
Subagency.
That's 45 on the license.
Subagency. So you're the listing broker or you're the selling broker.
Mm-hmm.
One or the other. You could also be both, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're both, you represent both sides. We got this, right? So seller, buyer. Subagency it's so simple, the concept itself, but to understand that's a problem. So here's the thing. If you represent the seller, who are you responsible to? Or accountable to?
The owner of the house.
The owner of the house, but what's your responsibility?
To sell the
To
house.
sell the house.
Just sell the house? Because we don't sell, just, I don't know if you
You
remember
gotta
that.
list the house, see
We
them.
market the property.
Yeah.
The seller sells.
Mm-hmm.
The buyer buys.
Yes.
We're not responsible for buying any house, are we?
No.
Okay, but a lot of people say, oh, to sell the house. No, we don't sell. We market. Now, if we're marketing and the buyer says, I want $0 for it, is that what you're going to do? Just offer the house for free?
No.
No.
No, you're going to hold your client's best interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's what it is. So agency agreement, you guys already know that agency agreement between you and the seller is fiduciary. Remember?
Yep.
And what does fiduciary mean? That you uphold your client's interest above all others. Yes?
Yes.
If you represent the buyer, same thing.
Still fiduciary.
Right? Still a fiduciary. Right? So buyer's best interest. Good so far?
Mm-hmm.
Subagency links these two. See here, I have them separated, right? That's your client, this is my client. If you agree to subagency, this links us together in this way and this way. So this will be subagency. What does that mean? It means that we share liability. Whatever I tell my clients, you could be liable for. Subagency is like we're merging our fiduciary duties. Whatever I tell my clients, you're liable for on your client's end. So if I screw up the deal, if I screw up, I'm supposed to be totally independent.
Mm-hmm.
So if I screw up the deal with my client, it shouldn't affect yours. Sub-agency links us. So if I screw up the deal,
Screws them up too. Or her.
yeah, the
So-
seller could be liable for whatever I said to my buyer. Or vice versa. You got it?
Mhm.
So sub-agency links the fiduciary duties, the contractual agreements, okay? Instead of separating them. That's why most of them offer, like I said earlier, offer 0 on the sub-agency. So if I give you 0 and you intend to be a sub-agent, are you getting paid?
Nope.
No. And what did I tell you 5 seconds ago? The agents are sharks. So if they're not getting paid, then they won't represent you that way. Okay?
Mhm.
Now, if the seller, the second paragraph there, if the seller does not wish to offer sub-agency to MLS members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because back in the day, you put on the MLS, you have that exposure, you have that liability and so on. So if the seller doesn't want that liability, they can still put it on the MLS. It says right there. But he has to direct the listing agent to split the commission with another broker. Separation. And I offer 2.5 to whoever brings the buyer. Right?
Mhm.
It says there, the seller agrees to pay the selling broker part of the commission, but, underline, does not risk being held liable for any statements or actions on the part of the selling broker. Again, where it says selling broker, underline that and put buyer's broker. Because whoever sells is the buyer's agent. We list, we put on the market. But who sells? Whoever brings a buyer.
Right.
Okay? So selling broker is buyers. Good?
Mhm.
You can ask questions because I know sub-agency is confusing.
Yeah.
It is confusing.
I know. It's simple.
I'm trying to
Because I
get
just drew it here. It's simple. The problem is,
Mhm.
you know, actually retaining
So
processing.
So sub-agency itself is linking both the seller and the buyer,
Risking each other.
risking each other's
Liability.
liability.
Mainly because you're bringing a buyer. Usually the buyer is the one that screws up everything. So any representation by the selling broker to the buyer that will affect the seller, it's linked. Okay?
Mhm.
So usually we split liabilities. You represent yours, I represent mine, split liability, right? Sub-agency, joint liability. Whatever I tell my clients, if it's it says right there, any statements or actions that I tell my clients, the seller is not liable. Sub-agency, the seller is liable for whatever I tell the buyer. Seller's your client. This is my client. But whatever I tell my client that screws up the deal, right? The buyer can sue me. Sub-agency, the buyer can sue me, you, and the seller. Do you think the seller wants that type of liability?
Nope.
Because I said something wrong to my clients?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So we separate liability,
Okay.
okay?
But that's why most MLS listings will have 0% on stuff.
Yeah.
So
And again, in real life, nobody explains that to the seller or the buyer. They just make the assumption that they don't need to know and just cross it off. That's it. Again, the reason why I stop here is because usually it's the way, every time in every class, I get to this point and they're like, huh? And I explain over and over again. Like, huh? Over and over again. So I know there's going to be questions. It's difficult. It's simple, but it's difficult to process. But it's simply liability. You don't want to tie the buyer's representations to the seller being liable for it. So you don't want this chain to happen. You want separation. So sub-agency joins them. Joint liability. No sub-agency, that this is my client, that's your client. Simple.
Mhm.
Separate. So whatever I tell my client, I'm liable for. Whatever you tell your client, you're liable for. You got it? Separated completely. Okay. Termination of listings, we talked about it in chapter 3. Hopefully the only reason why you're terminating is the very first one, which is
You sold.
you sold. That's it.
Completed.
You know they trick you. Because in the chapter 3, it's the last bullet point. Completion or fulfillment of whatever
Mm-hmm.
you got fired for. Here it's just performance. All right. Obtaining listings. All legal owners of the listing property, their spouses or their authorized agents, as well as the listing salesperson and or broker, should sign what?
The contract.
Of course, the listing agreement, the contract. Then you have a highlighted, all listing agreements must include a statement acknowledging receipt by the seller of the consumer information statement and the declaration of business relationship. Anybody remember CIS?
Yep.
What is it?
Consumers.
It's where it,
I didn't ask what the acronym means.
Oh.
And it's written right there, consumer information statement.
Yes.
What I'm asking is, what is it?
it's it lets you know, it lets the principal know that that, what do you call it? What type of agent you're going to be?
So if it's what type of agent you're going to be, then it's not the principal yet.
Oh, sorry.
Therefore, it's a disclosure, it's a notice.
Just letting you know what.
You're right, it's just it's not the principal yet.
Okay.
It's a potential seller. Hey, if I represent you in this capacity, this is what you can expect from me. If I represent you in this capacity, this is what you can expect from me.
So the prospect. Okay.
Got it? Now, it explains the type of business relationships. I want you to write there page 34 and page 35. Seller must be given a copy of the Attorney General Memorandum of New Jersey Law Against Discrimination. You guys remember that?
The what?
Page 57 and page 58. Please write it down.
Oh, there you go. What was the pages again?
57,
57,
58.
58. That's in chapter 4.
That's the one we have to show inside the office at all times.
Nope.
No.
No, that goes with the contract.
With a listing agreement. But what is it?
It's when we can't discriminate. Obviously.
Law against discrimination,
Obviously.
obviously.
Against all types of discrimination.
Yeah, so you can't discriminate. It shows also on page 58, it shows the penalties. Okay? And that's the most important part, because that's how when you scare people to like, hey, yes, I'll bring whoever wants to see the house and whoever's ready, willing, and able, because that's the key.
So make sure you're ready to pay the penalty if you mess up.
Yep, that's it.
Four, right? Got that one.
Just have it for you.
Yeah, in chapter 4.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Next, property information for listings. I'm just giving you the pages so you can relate and go back. You don't have to go through it now. Page 57, page 58. Yeah. You can always Google New Jersey Memorandum against of Law Against Discrimination. Anyway, property information for listings. Now this is going to go quick, this part, because I think it's common sense. In this page alone, there's 3 mentions of why you need to get as much information as possible. It says, when taking a listing, it is important to obtain as much information as possible concerning a parcel of real estate. So this ensures that all possible contingencies can be anticipated, particularly when the listing is shared with other brokers, salespeople, in a multiple listing arrangement. Let's look at some of the stuff that you should get. Bullet points. Name and address of the owners. Do you think we need that?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, you have to know the name of the people that your
Representing.
buyers.
So,
Well, sellers, sorry.
what do you think the address is?
The property that you're selling.
Wrong. That's the property address.
That's
The
what
address
it
of the owner is where they live,
Oh, where they
or
live.
their mailing address.
Well, if that's their primary residence.
Ah, but you still should ask.
Okay.
Because even in my driver's license, I have a P.O. box as my mailing address.
Okay, get it.
Okay, that's the address I want all correspondence to go to.
Yeah.
That's it. One is the physical, the other one is the mailing address. That's what you should know. Obviously, adequate description of the property, survey, or dimensions of the lot, number, size, and so on. Responsibility for disclosure. All right. Take 175. Responsibility for disclosure. So this is the second time it mentions in this page that you should get as much information as possible. So it says right there, even if asking penetrating and possible embarrassing questions pays off in the long run by saving both the principal and agent from potential legal difficulties. What we're saying here is very simple. Again, ask questions, right? You should tell the seller, listen, I'm like your doctor. If you don't tell me everything, I cannot help you. We got to know the details. Why are you selling? That's one of the most important questions, because your motivation will determine what we're going to do next. right? Are there any problems with the house? Like, is there mold? Anything you don't know? Any leaks? Anything that I cannot see or there would be no way to know. You got to tell me, because if that comes up during an inspection, you're going to lose value. Those $400,000 is going to go quickly to $350 just because of potential mold. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So ask as many questions as possible, even if penetrating and embarrassing questions. Ask. The next paragraph talks about the true tax figure. We covered that in
After they
taxes.
sign, right?
Sorry?
You ask these questions after they sign the contract. Just ask.
All the way at the bottom, it's the third time that it mentions responsibility for investigation. The more information an agent has concerning a piece of property, the easier it is to negotiate with a prospective purchaser, and the smaller the chance that the sale is hindered by unexpected problems. New Jersey Real Estate Commission rules and regulations clearly require, and you go to page, I think it's 121,
Skip all these contracts.
skip a bunch of them.
Before this part.
The ones that were double-sided, you can skip.
But you have to read those things, right? I'm very young.
You don't have to. Those are just samples of a potential contract.
Selling contract.
So for the exam itself, you don't need it. For real life, yeah, you should be familiar with it because you're going to prepare them.
Okay. Gotcha.
And the buyer's looking at you and he's pointing out where you gotta go. Something's wrong.
Page 131.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, I know.
Seriously?
All right, so the Real Estate Commission clearly requires the licensee to ascertain all pertinent information on the property that has been accepted for listing, and the results of your investigation must be made known to all prospective purchasers. Does it say, it says licensee, does it say sales agent or buyer's agent? It says licensee, right? So if you represent the seller and you get information that could affect the transaction, you've got to give that to the buyer. Hey, there's mold. Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, there's mold. There's a structural defect. You got to present that to the buyer because there are things that will affect the transaction. Okay? There's an issue with the title. Listen, we're going to close, just have to fix some things. But you have to disclose these things. That was material information in Chapter 3. Anything and everything that could affect the transaction must be disclosed. You remember that?
Yep.
Okay. And look what it says next. Failure to disclose any known defects or any defect that would have been apparent if a reasonable investigation had been made may make the licensee liable for any claims levied by the purchaser of the property. So you could get sued as well by the buyer. They're not just going to sue the seller, they're going to include you in that lawsuit. Okay? Now, what is a reasonable inspection? What do you think is a reasonable inspection or investigation? Visual, yeah.
Visual.
Look around. And, of course, ask questions. That's reasonable. Nobody requires you to go into details yourself, right?
Exactly.
Nobody requires to go and see if there's anything above here. Get a ladder. No, that's for the inspectors, right?
Yeah.
Our job is to look at it. Apparently looks okay. The rest the seller will tell me in the seller property condition disclosure statement or the inspections. As far as title and all those issues, I'll get it in the title search. But you got to ask questions. Is there anything I need to know before? You got it? Almost like in the marriage, you ask, is there anybody that'll put me? Like, tell me something. They just want to make sure that these two should get married. Cooperation with other licensees. Every licensee must fully cooperate with all other New Jersey licensees in the sale of a listed property unless specifically ordered not to do so by the seller. We talk about waiver of broker cooperation. Remember that? That was Chapter 2. If a seller does not want to list broadly for all other agents to see in all agencies, then they have to sign the waiver. So your job, if they don't sign that waiver, your job is to put on the MLS, slap it there, and if somebody from Weicker wants to show the property, if somebody from RE/MAX wants to show the property, you have to show. Okay, you cannot say, oh, well, you're from RE/MAX. No. Okay, you have to cooperate with them. It's required. It says any MLS must receive a listing within 48 hours of signing, and any written offer must be transmitted to the seller within 24 hours. How long do you have to submit offers?
Within 24 hours.
How long do you have to submit offers?
5 business days. 3.
How long do you have to
Wait.
submit offers? It's written right there. How long do you have to submit offers?
48 hours.
40 hours. No.
I did the same thing to you in Chapter 2. How long do you have to submit offers?
The moment you list it.
I'm gonna smack you.
Cause man.
It's written right there.
48 hours of signing.
That's listings. I'm talking about offers.
Oh, offers. 24 hours.
No.
When they're written.
When they're written, yes. If they're
Oh.
verbal offers, look at my question. My question was, how long do you have to submit offers? There's going to be two very similar answers. One says, and I told you this in chapter 2, one says all offers must be submitted within 24 hours, and the other one says written offers. Okay? If it's not in writing, it does not count. So negotiability of commission. Negotiability of, I have so much editing on this video.
Sorry.
Negotiability of commission. We already know commission rates are 6% in Jersey.
No.
No.
What do you mean? What do you mean no?
Oh. You have to
But I
negotiate.
just showed you over here, 6%.
6%, remember?
Remember? It's right there.
You can negotiate it. Up or down.
You have to negotiate up and down. It cannot be a standard. There's no standard. The common, what's average and what we hear out there is 5 or 6%. But there's nothing set in stone that it must be 5 or 6%. Okay? So it says commission rates are negotiated between client and broker
At the time of writing up your contract.
at the time of listing. Yes.
Oh, contract list. I'm just getting one of
Because it's a difference between listing and contract.
Yeah.
The listing is a type of contract, it's an agreement.
Uh-huh.
But when we're talking about contracts,
You have more
it's a
talking-
purchase agreement.
Purchases. Okay.
Because there's
So the listing is right at the beginning. Contract is always going to
Yeah.
be okay.
everything is a contract, but in this case, we're specifically listing. Because if you bring commission at time of contract, hey, I found you a buyer, by the way, I'm charging you this. No. It's upfront. Just like when you go to a restaurant, upfront they tell you how much,
Some.
Not the fancy restaurants.
not the fancy
They
restaurants,
let you
right?
know.
Or those that do specials downstairs. Anyway, Attorney General Memorandum,
What is special though, sir?
next door, with their specials are not announced. The price. Right?
Yeah.
Not announced.
Maybe even blank.
No, they just say the special is this. Great.
No, they leave the price to, you know.
You guys already know Attorney General Memorandum that every listing must have a copy of this memorandum, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the right-hand side on top, it says a licensee must refuse to take a listing from any owner who indicates an intention to violate the law against discrimination. Underline must refuse.
And you have to let them know.
Yeah. So that's when I said, if they say, hey, don't show the property to any Peruvians, right? You're the one saying it. So the Peruvian guy is saying, don't show the property to any Peruvians, right? That's discrimination. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, listen, I'd love to comply with that, but by law, I have to show the property to anybody that's ready, willing, and able. So I'm going to show it to anybody. If you cannot accept that, then I cannot work with you. So I must refuse taking the listing from that owner. Okay? I saw a property earlier that's almost what happened. They answered the phone and spoke with me because I was Portuguese. Right? If it was anything other than Portuguese, she wouldn't want it.
Wow.
Yeah. Luckily, I was not representing her or attempting to represent, so hey, whatever. They can get sued on their own.
Amen.
All right, pricing the property. Today we're going to leave early, okay? It's just this chapter.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I won't have time to do the other one.
We're not.
Hmm?
We're not.
Because it's contracts and I have to go in detail. And unfortunately, we had some difficulties.
Okay.
But it's okay, because tomorrow we're going to have contracts and then we're going to start chapter 12, which is leases. So it's good like that. So pricing the property. Do you think it's important to know how to price a property?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah? What do you mean, yeah?
I mean, yeah, you have to know what the value of
What's
it.
exactly, what's the value of this? And if I'm going to sell, I don't want to undercut, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is. So pricing the property is of primary importance. Even though it is the responsibility of the broker or salesperson to advise, counsel, and assist, it is ultimately the seller, make sure you understand, the seller who must determine the listing price. So if the seller says, even though you explain to them, hey, it's worth $500,000, the seller says, I want to sell for $1 million, okay. You want to sell for $1 million, go sell for $1 million.
But
You're entitled to say, not with me,
Yeah.
but it's whatever the seller wants. Your job, as it says next, because the average seller usually does not have the background to make an informed decision about a fair market price, right? The real estate agent must be prepared to offer knowledge, information, and expertise in this area. So again, it is your job to show them and bring them down to earth and say, hey, $1 million
Let's be realistic.
stuff. Here's most likely what's going to happen because of houses in this area are being sold at this value. Houses similar to yours, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's our job. It says a broker or person, or salesperson, I'm sorry, can help the seller determine the listing price for the property through a comparative market analysis. So a broker salesperson can help the seller determine the listing price for the property through a comparative market analysis. These are the CMAs or comps. And this is a comparison of the prices of recently sold homes that are similar in location, style, and amenities to the property of the listing seller. Okay, we just spoke about that. It says, although it has some resemblance to an appraisal, the CMA differs in several important ways. It is usually offered as a complimentary service by a salesperson or broker, in contrast to the paid appraisal rendered by an appraiser. Remember chapter 2, we talked about this in advertisement?
Mhm.
We cannot offer a free appraisal because that's not what we do.
Mhm.
We do free valuations or comps,
We do comps.
right? The appraiser charges for it,
Mhm.
for the appraisal, the actual appraisal. Now, both studies analyze recent sales of similar properties, but the CMA does so in a more superficial manner. So the CMA, what we do, please highlight, Mark, includes material not usually considered in regular appraisals. Information on properties that fail to sell, for example, and the list of competing properties currently on the market. It also includes significant dead on the market information.
Days on the market.
Dead on the market.
Oh, because.
The longer it stays there, the worse it hits.
Yeah.
So yes, it has days on the market, and that's very important because if it's listed for 3 days, it's fresh, that's most likely the value.
Mhm.
Most likely, if the agent was good at what he or she does, then most likely the value. If it's there for 100 days, not under contract or anything like that, then something's wrong. It was not priced properly or whatever it is. And if it gets more than that, then something's definitely wrong, right?
Mhm.
So the most important thing for you to understand is we need to know how to price the property. Because a property does not sell because of value. And I can guarantee you that in any market. You have the wrong value, and that's why it's still there. Otherwise, it's flooded with buyers, potential buyers. Simple. Like, he's been able to put properties on the market, and a couple days later, boom, somebody puts an offer. Why? Knowing how to price it. Some agents fall for what the seller says. Other agents are real about it and say, hey, listen, these are properties in the market. And I'll show you. Listen, properties at this value have been on the market for the past 200 days. You want to wait that long?
No.
That's why motivation is key, knowing why you're selling, right? You want to wait that long? Sure. If you're not in a rush, we'll just test the waters. If you want to sell, then look at these properties that sold within the last 90 days. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So pricing the property is the most important part of all this. So knowing how to look at a property, understanding the seller's needs, coming up with the actual value facing what the seller needs. You want to sell quick? Drop the price. You want to take your time? Sure, let's test the waters. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay. License laws dictate that a CMA, this is the second time, we're going to read it a third time in a different chapter. License laws dictate that a CMA must never be called a free appraisal. It should contain a statement that it should not be considered the equivalent of any appraisal prepared by a New Jersey licensed or certified appraiser. And that's a question on
That's
the
a
test.
question.
I know.
And they even give you the quotes and everything, and two of them look exactly the same.
What have I been saying all along? There's always two very similar and two that are completely unrelated, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. You just got to look out for those. That's all. Or just pick C or the longest one. Anyway. The last thing there says the broker, you don't have to flip pages, stay right there. You don't have to flip pages, stay right there. The broker should convey to the seller the fact that the eventual selling price is set by the buying public. See, listing price is by the listing broker, selling price is by the selling broker. Remember what I was saying? Who's the selling broker? Whoever brings a buyer. So in this scenario, the selling price is what a buyer said, this is what the property's worth, and the seller agreed. Got it? So the buying public, when you do comparables, it's based on recent sales. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your property should bring $300,000 as the other ones did. Maybe more, maybe a little less, depending on the market trends and the details of your property that are different than the other properties, right? But the buyers usually determine that. If you agree to a buyer's offer, then that's what it is. So usually the buying public determines. And it's very easy to explain this. When you go to supermarket, a lot of people look for the discounts, right? There's a regular price, but they say, you know what? A week from now, I have 20% off, so I'll go at that time. See, as a buyer, I determine the value of it. I want the 20% off. I don't want the full price.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're right away. So it's very clear for you to understand here. I mean, I need you guys to clearly understand this. Listing price is set by the seller. Fair market value is exposed by us and our expertise. But the selling price is buying public. Okay? Very, very important. Put stars on these three, please. Very, very important to know the difference. And we're done with the chapter.